Hello everybody and welcome again to chesslecture.com. This is International Master Dave Vigorito. Today I'm going to look at a game that I thought was a little bit of an eye-opener, a game of Magnus Carlsen. It's actually from last year, but I don't think that we really covered it here. And the game is interesting for many reasons. It was played in the Qatar Open tournament around Christmas time in 2015, and it was very rare having a reigning world champion playing in a Swiss tournament. It was a very strong Swiss. Kramnik also played, and some other top players. So I imagine there was a certain motivation for him to play. And he didn't really start so well. I think he had a draw or two. But the game of interest was against Li Chao of China, who in databases it usually says Li Chao B because there's more than one. And Li Chao, he's like a 2700, 2750 player who's kind of under the radar. He actually played in a tournament where I live in Boston a few years ago. I wasn't playing in it, but I watched him play. For some reason, he was in Boston and he played in this tournament. Coincidentally, this same tournament is beginning again on this very day that I'm recording this. So Li Chao is 2750. And this game I thought was very interesting because Carlsen, as I've discussed before, now he probably has a bit of a reputation as being a kind of a dry player, a technical player. But like I said, it's I think it's just the style that he's adapted because everybody at the very top level is so strong tactically. Kramnik, who also people think of as dry, who used to play very sharp when he was younger. Anand, Nakamura, of course, Rajabov, etc. So in order to beat these guys, he had to find other means. These guys aren't just going to let you checkmate them. So you can't just go some all-out attack because then you're taking your own risk. So he found that he was just better than them at certain technical positions. I think part of it is that he's young and in tremendous shape, so he's going to have more stamina for like a 6 or 7 hour game, stuff like that. But this game was striking to me because he not only wins in really like a purely tactical fashion, but I remember a year ago watching this game live, and he was making his moves with remarkable speed in a position where I would want like half an hour just to make my way through the confusion. So let's take a look. It's a very sharp game and what is a somewhat topical opening. So Magnus is white. He plays d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and now f3. All right, so this is an odd-looking move. It's usually called the Anti-Gruenfeld. It could just transpose into a Samish King's Indian if black plays bishop g7 and then e4. Also, there's a lot of little kind of oddities that can arise. Sometimes black plays knight c6 here. And the idea is actually like e4, e5, and the bishop might even come out to like c5 or b4. Black can, of course, just play bishop g7, and we'll get some kind of King's Indian. A few years ago, Bashar Lagrave introduced a very strange way of playing. He played e6, which looks weird with g6, and then after e4, d5. So a very strange opening concept, like for both colors. It looks to me like both colors are just making weird moves, but it appears to be somewhat viable and was fashionable for a while. But the like, kind of pure Gruenfeld move is d5. And the point of white's play is that after cd, knight takes, e4, there's no knight to capture on c3. So knight c3 looks like a more useful move than f3, but we're avoiding the capture and getting this kind of certain type of Gruenfeld pawn structure. Also, we gain time. So knight b6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, castles, queen d2. White is very often interested, at least, in castling queenside. And there's different ways for black to play here. e5 is one way right away, and then d5, c6 to chip away at the center. And here white can try different things like h4, just going for an attack, or castle long, or play rook d1. More common is knight c6, which happened, and then castle long. And now the move that Li Chao played was the main move for a long time, but it's under a bit of a cloud, and this game does not help it in any way. He played f5. Here too, like d5 can be played. I'm sorry, e5 can be played, but after d5, probably white is doing pretty well. So here, the modern move, which is also a weird move, is queen d6. Kind of a peculiar looking move, just bringing out the queen where it can be attacked in various ways. But the idea is to play rook d8 and attack the d pawn some more. And there's a lot of like kind of odd things that can happen here. White can still play h4. There's also a lot of positions where white will play knight b5, and then the queen will go to another strange square like d7, and then a6 will come chasing the knight back. So sometimes this happens in chess. You can either prevent like a move like knight b5 or allow it and then gain back the tempo chasing it away. So yeah, there's some kind of weird things that can happen in this line, but I'm not really going to go into this theory. But queen d6 is definitely the main move now, and probably like 6 years ago it was not even a move, and it was probably just a computer suggestion that everybody kind of latched onto. For a long time, f5 was the move, just kind of chipping away at the center from a different perspective. The idea is if e5, then black can play knight b4 and bishop e6 and get like a stronghold on d5. So for a while, white was playing h4, fe, h5, just going for an attack. But this method of play is not really seen so much anymore. It turns out that black's counterplay is in the center stronger. So even just like playing gh and bishop f5, and the bishop can go to g6 and maybe e5 at some point, it looks good for black. This line got a lot of attention about 7 or 8 years ago when top player Magnus like lost some horrible game in this line with white to sadly the late player Igor Kernasov, who got hit by a car or something. And Mamadjarov was getting crushed so badly right out of the opening that he accused his opponent of cheating. You know, he was 2670 FIDE or something, so to play good moves he must have been cheating. This was at an Aeroflot tournament, so he got the directors, and Kernasov laughed, and they searched him, and they found a pen and a package of cigarettes. But Mamadjarov like protested and left the tournament. It was really sour grapes in my opinion. And so since that game, Mamadjarov, Kernasov, this method of play disappeared for white. But what happened was practice has shown that e5, which I think a lot of players would just play without any thought, is better for white than was originally thought. Because this move, f5, was even recommended in a well-known pair of books by Boris Avrukh on the Gruenfeld and the Grandmaster Repertoire series. But white came up with a bunch of ideas, and a lot of it after knight b4 was based on this move that Carlsen played, knight h3. Before this, there was also like h4 had been tried, bishop h6, and all the lines are like related, but knight h3 looks like the best move. The other moves can wait, and you know the knight will come to f4 at some point, and then h4 can be on the cards. There's also a lot of kind of tactical possibilities with this advanced d5. Again, I'm not going to get really too far into the theory, but you don't really see this line too much anymore because black is not playing f5. So here the main move is a5, and this might look a little odd, but you know the pawn could advance. But another point is that if white plays a3, you might even be able to just leave the knight there. So for a while, this line, like did okay with black because black won some kind of flashy games where he could just play maybe like bishop e6 and queen d7 and leave the knight hanging and get some nice wins. And I know Peter Svidler won a nice game in this line. So Li Chao did not play this. I imagine Carlsen could just follow the established theory of the day, and which was good for white and is still good for white as far as I know. Li Chao played a different move. He played Queen E8. All right, this might look peculiar, but it's not such a crazy idea. Like the queen is going to use the light squares. It might go to F7. Knight A4 might be a possibility. And A5 is still quite possible. In fact, he plays it next move. And Carlsen actually, it's funny, he thought a lot longer here than he did during the tactical phase of the game. I think he's just trying to figure out, like, all right, what can we transpose to? What is the point of this move? Queen E8. I think one is that, like, maybe he'll go Queen F7 attacking this pawn, and if Knight G5, then Knight A2 check. Might be possible. And I think another point is if he does Knight F4, maybe black can even get away with G5 because the square is covered. And then if the knight moves, maybe F4 and bishop F5. So the move's not without point. But Magnus played King B1, which is quite a normal move in almost any position where white is going to castle queenside. And now he did A5 after all. I mean, now if he does Queen F7, then probably just Knight G5, and then we can play H4 and have a pretty good version. So A5, Bishop E2, just almost a waiting move. C6, shoring up the D5 square. Rook C1. This move maybe doesn't do a whole lot, but it's still kind of not so committal yet, and maybe the C-file could open. And now black made a move that maybe there's not time for. He played King H8. Now sometimes black is going to do something like Bishop E6 to G8. I actually had a certain player many years ago play this way a couple times against me, but in a Dutch, a Leningrad Dutch, and black kind of has a similar setup here. And I mean, I think he's going to try to do, Bishop E6 and Queen F7 at some point if the knight ever goes to F4. So Carlsen had a funny response to this. I don't know if he was being coy or if he just decided it was the best move. Probably he decided it's the best move. But he meets the king in the corner by doing the same thing. He plays king to A1. And this move also looks strange. I think maybe he's setting up that if there's ever any kind of attack on A2, maybe he can leave it there and it'll never be check. Maybe he's also just waiting one more move because he's already made all these useful waiting moves. Bishop E2, Rook C1, but he doesn't want to commit the knight on H3 yet because maybe it should go to F4 or G5. So it's kind of a funny idea. So now Bishop E6 finally has to do something. And Knight F4. And okay, here Knight G5, maybe he can play Knight to C4. And that looks a little bit annoying. So Knight F4. Queen F7, and now H4. So this is, I think this is kind of where we see a little point to King A1, because this is not check. So he's willing to give up this pawn. And now things start to get very messy, and Carlsen, like I said, he moves faster in this phase of the game than he did with his subtle king moves. He took on A2. Okay, this looks like it has to be the normal move. I think computers will show maybe it's not really right, and maybe he should be playing a move like Rook FD8, which threatens Bishop to E5. And like if H5, I think he can go G5, and it's still not so clear. Knight G6 doesn't even do so much because he can just move the king. So bishop a2, h5. It looks better to take on a2 than to try to threaten bishop takes e5, but it's really hard to come to grips with this position, I think, without using a computer for regular people. But Carlsen's judgment or calculation, I think kind of both. I think a move like king a1 is intuitive, but when it gets down to really crunch time, he calculates everything perfectly. So king g8 to get off the h-file. I mean, now if he does g5, h6 traps the bishop. So, all right, takes check, and then bishop takes f4. Should be good for white. So he does king g8, hg, hg, and now g4. So even though the pawn on a2 has been captured, white is threatening to kind of open everything up. So he played bishop to b3. All right, it's natural maybe to play like a4. This is going to be black's idea because this a3 is going to really come at the white king quickly. But like, all right, so it takes a3, b3, and black can take this pawn on b3 however he wants, but white's attack is crashing through because he can use his rooks, and black can't use his rooks. That would be the easiest way to explain it without going through a bunch of computer variations. So he plays bishop to b3. And now he has to be quite careful because a4 to a3 is going to threaten various mates, as we'll see. So he played kind of a nice subtle move. He played bishop to d1. And one point of this is to just make room for the queen. If you put this position in a computer, it comes up with another winning move, which is kind of, crazy, but it's a similar idea, I suppose. And the move is bishop a6, which is, obviously kind of a funny move. But for one move, it closes the A file and prepares queen h2. So computers will show that it's winning, but bishop d1 looks a little more human. So a4, queen h2, threatening queen h7 mate, rook fd8, queen h7, king f8. So still looks pretty wild. White's attack looks strong, but this move is going to be very crushing. Computers also g takes f5, I think, is winning, but Carlsen calculated something else. He played d5, and I mentioned that this is an idea sometimes, and here it's quite graphic. Even though this square is covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and only a couple times by white, it's kind of like an interference theme, locking out the queen, and it also attacks the knight on b6. So black plays knight c4, which I think is like a nice move. I think that technically the position might even be lost, but and here Carlsen plays very quickly. He played knight takes g6 check. All right, another move that looks kind of obvious is to play e6, but then black doesn't have to worry about his queen. He plays a3, and actually white is getting checkmated. You can take the queen, but ab is mate. All right, so king here, mate. And of course, with the knight on c4, taking here, rook a3, and then knight a2, and you take it. I think this is also leading to a quick mate. Here we even have, let's see, bishop a2. I think just even bishop takes d1 will win for black. For example, like knight takes g6, or let's say we just take the queen, then rook b3 is the quickest mate, and then rook is coming to a8. So there's various ways, I think, for black to win here. Maybe rook d to e8 also wins after knight takes g6, queen takes. So black's attack just arrives first. So he plays knight takes g6, but it's not really so easy to calculate all this, I think this is indeed winning. But now if queen takes a3, then white is first because he has this clever rook h8 check. Bishop takes, and then bishop h6, and it leads to kind of a pretty well-known mating sequence like this. So that's faster, but like I mentioned before, Carlsen was like playing, watching this live. He was spending like under a minute on each move, so it seemed very easy for him. So king e8, and now e6. This way you can take the queen with check, and even then you have to be careful. So a3, there's not really anything else. I wonder what Li Chao was thinking here, if he knew he was just losing or if he thought maybe he was winning, because it's close. E takes f7, king d7, so now he's running away. And here there's only one way to win, and like everything else loses. Like, all right, again, if ba takes, king b1, and I think here there's a funny way to win with bishop c2 check is the quickest. And like if rook takes, then rook b3, and then there's a funny little mate in here. There's just so many pieces around the white king too, and if bishop takes, there's a very cute win here with rook a1 takes, bishop takes c3, all of a sudden, and another kind of cute mate with the minor pieces. So the only move, which Carlsen played almost instantly, is knight e5 check, making way for the queen. All right, so he took with the bishop. If he moves his king, you just do knight takes c4, and that covers enough stuff. If you take with a knight on e5, then you can take here, and again, just by removing one minor piece from the attack, it's good enough. So he took with a bishop, and then queen takes f5, king c7, and here too, I think white has just one way forward, and he sacrifices his queen back. Queen takes e5, knight takes, and now bishop takes b3, ab, king takes, knight d3. I think he also did a good job keeping track of the material. I'd be like, counting on my fingers or something. King b1, knight takes c1, rook takes c1, and as we can say, the smoke is cleared a bit, and white has two pieces for a rook, two bishops no less, as well as all these kind of dangerous pawns kicking around. So game lasts just a few more moves. King c8. All right, he could take on f7, but then dc. Now we're attacking this, and if it moves, then maybe like knight b5. So king c8, dc, bc, f4, and resigned. Because if he takes on g4, then bishop e6 check, and otherwise white's pawns are just kind of marching along. So this game, I think it's worth playing over a couple times. It's just so I think it's so complicated, but for Carlsen, it was very easy to figure out what was going on in this, especially in this extremely kind of heated part of the game, like from around like move 20 to move 30. There's a lot of difficult calculation, in my opinion, but nothing for him. So the next time somebody tells you that Carlsen is just kind of boring, maybe show them this game, which is only a year old, to show what he's capable of when the position demands it. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time on chesslecture.com.